So Pastor Naomi read a pretty cool story for us this morning. And we're going to be talking about a couple different cool stories. But this is a story about Jesus performing a miracle, where he took something that there wasn't very much of, and then all of a sudden there was enough for everybody. And this is a story that we talked about in Vacation Bible School, if you can remember back that far. But it got me to thinking, they talk about fish after all. Do you guys like fishies? Okay, so if I had all these fishies in this little tiny bag, how many people do you think I could feed? You think 15 from here? You wouldn't be very hungry after that, wouldn't it? You say 25, so one person, each person gets 19 to 25, so each person gets one fishy. Have you counted all the fishies that are in here? No. Okay, that's your estimate. What do you guys think? If we gave these to everybody who's here today, look how many people we have. Do you think that this would feed everybody who's here today? No, probably not. So there wouldn't be any left over, right? So if I tried to feed everybody with this morning, how would you guys react? What would you do? If I was like, okay, everybody get some of these. What would you guys do? Would you laugh at me? AJ, were you laughing a little bit over there? Would you think that was crazy of me to say? Yeah, a little bit. So, would you feel sorry for me that I would think that this could feed all these people? Yeah, it'd be a little embarrassing for me. But this is kind of what happened with Jesus. So, he was healing and he was teaching and he was kind of in the middle of nowhere. And his disciples came to him and said, look, Jesus, we have all these hungry people who've been listening to you for a long, long time. That might be how you feel sometimes when you listen to my sermons. You get really hungry and you've been there for so long. They're so hungry, right? So they said, look, Jesus, we should send them home so they can go get something to eat. What do you think Jesus did? He said, yeah, they don't have to go home. Do you think he said, just get in the car and run to McDonald's and pick up something for them to eat? Right, they didn't have McDonald's back then, that's true. He said, you give them something to eat. He said, you, the disciples, you give them something to eat. Well, the disciples were looking around and they pulled out their reach in their pockets and they said, we just have a few fish and a few loaves of bread. That's not enough to feed all these people. So because the disciples were so confused, Jesus had them bring the fishies and they weren't fishies, but the fish and the bread to him. And what he did was he had everybody sit down in little groups on the grass. All 5,000 plus the people did. He had them all sit in little groups. And he said, he lifted up the food and he blessed it. You guys do that before you eat sometimes, right? You say a blessing, like, thank you, God, for this food, right? So, that's what Jesus did. And then what do you think happened? They had a lot of food. Now, we don't exactly know what happened when he did this. We know that there were a lot of food, but we don't know exactly what happened. So he had this basket, and we don't know if they just automatically, as soon as he prayed, they just started overflowing with fish and bread. And maybe they didn't start overflowing immediately. Maybe just as everybody took a piece out, there was still a piece in there. It looked like they didn't take anything out at all, like a new one reappeared. Maybe that's what happened. Or maybe, what do you think would happen? And the food, maybe that's what happened too. That's another great idea of what happened. We don't know exactly. But maybe one of the things that happened was that everybody was so moved by this prayer that Jesus gave that they reached into their own pockets and backpacks and bags and saw that they had something they could share too. So look, there are bags underneath your pews there. So you might have to reach over. So, and what's in there? There's a lot of goldfish. So, do you think we have enough fishies to share with all the people who are here now? Yeah, so why don't you guys go and give everybody some fishies? Make sure everybody gets one, okay? As you run out, there's still some more up here. Now, some of you will say that it's not really a miracle to get everybody to share. And if you say that, perhaps you have never been around cranky children. Sharing can be a miracle. Raise your hand if you didn't get any fishies. Everybody get some? Oh, Gail didn't get any. You gotta get in the back there. You're out. You want to grab one of those other bags and then go in the back? Bailey said this was a very good idea. Very good demonstration. So Barbara Brown Taylor, who's another preacher and professor, she writes that when people are saying, but that's not a miracle, sharing's not a miracle, she says she knows that that's what people are thinking. She says that's just people being generous, sharing what they have, even when it's not much, even when it's not enough to go around. That's not a miracle. That's just a whole crowd of people moving from a sense of scarcity, a sense of we don't have anything in our pockets, to, oh my gosh, look at everything that we have to go around. Overcoming a fear of going hungry, giving up their need to protect themselves. She said that's what people refusing to play the age-old game of what's mine is mine. You still have a bunch left? Well, maybe that's for you. Said it's just the age-old game of what's mine is mine and what's yours is yours. People turning their pockets inside out for one another without worrying about what's in it for them. That's not a miracle, she said. Or is it? Too often when we think of God and we think of this miracle, right, we think of God as kind of like a wizard, like Harry Potter, right? So he's got a wand, and if we ask him something, God will just fulfill it with a magic spell, right? You're like, I don't care, I'm eating these fishies. That's okay. So, even though sometimes we think of God as doing that, and sometimes God does do that, right? If we ask God for something, sometimes it is kind of magical, the way that God responds. But other times, we need to stop waiting for a miracle to happen and to participate in a miracle ourselves. So that's what we did this morning, okay? So as you guys go up to Children's Church and as you think about this story, I want you to remember that sometimes God calls us to work with God to make miracles happen, okay? So that's pretty awesome, isn't it? All right, before we go up to Children's Church, though, what do we have?